Welcome to the Beau Show, the home of faith, family, and freedom. Well, folks, we've come to the end of another year. And one of the best parts of this year for me has been hearing from new viewers of this show through your messages, your emails, and in person. I thank you for watching the show and spreading the good word. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. I want to spend some time focusing on a number of things and people and stories from 2022 that are worth reminding ourselves of. We have very short memories, and we look back and think to ourselves, wow, that happened in 2022? So let's take a trip down memory lane for a year in review. This is what I call 22 in 22, or 22 memorable stories that are worth our attention. This is a list that I have curated personally from stories that I covered and provided commentary for in the past year. And hopefully, you will all remember these stories as well as the impact that they had, and may still have impact in 2023. So, let's get started. Number 1, Novak Djokovic and Kyrie Irving showed an athlete should have health autonomy and that nations have bad health policy. Novak and Kyrie elected not to get the COVID vaccine for personal health reasons. At a time when professional leagues and nations were mandating it, they decided to do what was best for them. But in the process, they were pilloried for it. They were treated as health risks, as if they were a danger to others, when in reality, wouldn't they be a bigger risk to themselves? Djokovic even had COVID, so he had natural immunity. But that wasn't enough for him to be able to play in the Australian Open. In a very embarrassing way for Australia, he was admitted to the country, he got quarantined in a hotel for multiple days, and then was deported, even though that he'd done all the proper paperwork, the declaration, and protocols to enter Australia to be able to play. As a result, not only did he not get to play in the Australian Open, but he was prevented from playing in the US Open for the same absurd reason. Australia and US policy on the unvaccinated prevented the world #1 player from setting an all-time record of Grand Slam wins. That is a travesty to a tennis great. And as we have now seen, the science shows that the vaccine was not effective in reducing transmission. So any national policy that mandated the vaccine was unscientific. And as we now also see, it was damaging to a global athlete's success. The Brooklyn Nets only turned to Kyrie Irving when their roster got depleted due to injury. And he made a point to come to a game unmasked and sit in the crowd, highlighting the fact that spectators could come watch his team, but yet he himself could not play in the game. Number 2, Neil Young is a fool, and Spotify needs Joe Rogan more than Rogan needs Spotify. Piggybacking on the mistaken COVID policy of sports leagues and other organizations and governments, mega podcaster Joe Rogan was criticized for interviewing scientists such as Dr. Robert Malone, who questioned the vaccine narrative and policies, especially towards children. And merely for interviewing Malone and others, Spotify, who hosts Rogan's podcast exclusively, came under harsh scrutiny, especially from old fart Neil Young, who hasn't been relevant in ages, but has decided to make himself a martyr. As a result, he and a few other lefties decided to pull their music from Spotify in an act of virtuous defiance. Spotify had a limp-wristed reaction, pulling some of Rogan's more controversial episodes while leaving up others. Spotify said it believes in free speech, but it's obvious it did not with this knee-jerk reaction, as if a mere interview is akin to killing grandma. But Spotify understands economics, and to cancel Joe Rogan would be a huge mistake, because Rogan can take his business elsewhere, just like Howard Stern did. Spotify needs Rogan more than Rogan needs Spotify. Number 3, we gave a ton of money to Ukraine. And what do we have to show for it? Look, I think it's a noble thing that Zelensky wants to defend his country, and he's made a valiant defense. But we are the backers. We are an inflation nation because of bloated government spending coming out of a pandemic. So why do we keep funding this war? Even if we lose no troops, we are losing resources. And I fail to see what our return on investment is going to be. I feel for their people, for certain. But how much more will this go on? Number 4, Disney went woke. With Bob Chapek at the helm, the Mouse House went down the tubes, trying to capitulate to a loud few. They changed the way that their theme parks addressed genders and produced a slate of content that was just bizarre and unprofitable. They attacked the parental rights and education bill in Florida, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. They bit the hand that fed them and waged war against their biggest financiers, which are parents. And as a result, they lost special tax benefits and self-governance. Bob Iger has been brought back in to clean up the mess. And this is a great segue to number 5. Desantis triumphed. As governor of Florida, Desantis took a proactive role protecting kids and parents' rights. He saw Disney slip into trendy corporate political activism and fought back. All too often, corporations have way too much leeway, and the notion of diversity and inclusion went into overdrive. DeSantis brought autonomy and freedom to Floridians, and as a result of that, he enjoyed a 20-point victory over his gubernatorial opponent, making him the most popular governor in America, using a diplomatic yet matter-of-fact, logical tone to stand up to the woke virus. Number 6, the first black female Supreme Court justice was nominated and confirmed. Ketanji Brown Jackson made history with this confirmation. But the process illuminated a very important question that she could not or would not answer. Her credentials were clearly evidentiary of a solid judge. No one doubted her academics or her experience, but some of her sentencing seemed a bit soft on child pornography defendants. And what was the question that she could not answer? Well, it became the question of the year. Number 7, what is a woman? Who would have thought that we would have to ask that? But Justice Jackson answered Senator Marsha Blackburn's question using societal redefinition. Transgender activism demanded that society call a man transition to female a woman. No questions asked. This also manifested itself in women's sports, in which biological males began to beat their female counterparts as they were allowed to compete with one another. J.K. Rowling, author of the famous Harry Potter books, drew fire for standing up for the definition of a woman, since she's a proud feminist. But even her own Harry Potter actors that she cast decided to trendily attack her. Number 8, the Oscars were a joke, but Will Smith's slap was not. In a jaw-dropping moment, Chris Rock's jaw was jabbed. It was a stunning moment in Oscars history, and probably one that they'd like back. Because we won't remember who won Best Picture this year, but we will remember Will Smith attacking the host on stage and seeming unfazed and unremorseful about it. It set a bad precedent for how we view violence. While social media was trying to prove that Trump incited violence, Will Smith was giving a masterclass in it. Number 9, Hunter Biden's laptop was real. Thanks to the Twitter files, we know that the New York Post story was accurate, but federal agencies were pressuring social media companies to quash it, and they acquiesced. As Elon Musk has said, every conspiracy theory thought about Twitter is pretty much true. Hunter Biden is not just some black sheep. He is someone who's used his position and his father's to do covert, anti-American business deals and jeopardize national security, giving other nations undue leverage. It may even be why he's giving billions to Ukraine. We are only hitting the tip of that iceberg. But it was real, and it changed how people voted. Full stop. Number 10, crime rose. The BLM protests and riots of 2020 spilled over into a nationwide crime spree, where cops were the bad guys and the looters were the heroes. Hollywood created bailout funds for those who were arrested. Justin Timberlake supported the Minnesota Freedom Fund. So while he was singing about bringing sexy back, he was bringing crime back. Violent homicides were way up, especially in America's most dangerous places, like New York City. If you stole under about $900 worth of merch, You could just walk out with it. Number 11. Johnny Depp dragged himself through the mud to salvage his reputation. This was the most exciting trial of the year. And while it seemed like a bunch of tawdry mudslinging, Depp was out to save his reputation and admitted that he was a drinker and he was a drug user, but he was not a wife abuser. He did this because the gossip alone cost him movie roles, including the Pirates franchise. As I said earlier, Disney had gone full tilt woke, and they made a huge mistake. This wasn't just a victory for Depp. This was a victory for the falsely accused and a reckoning for the media gossip complex. Number 12, the southern border got worse. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris still have not visited the southern border. They think that giving your money to Ukraine is more important. But while that was happening, people and fentanyl were getting trafficked to America. There were record apprehensions of migrants and of drug seizures because Biden relaxed border policy. Southern border cities can't handle it. So governors like Greg Abbott began shipping them to the northern states to prove the point. The border is still a mess, and the Supreme Court has recently ruled that Title 42 must remain in place, in spite of Joe Biden wanting to get rid of it.